everyone, it's Sophie and I'm back with yet another Public Lands 101 video, and today's topic is livestock grazing. As with energy development, a lot of our public land is leased for livestock grazing. In fact, the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, which are the two main agencies that issue grazing permits, manage roughly 250 million acres of rangelands across the United States. For a long time, access to public lands for grazing went unregulated. Ultimately, this didn't bode very well for the long-term health of the land because as the industry grew, so did competition for resources. Seeing the need to preserve public lands for ranching as well as other uses, our current grazing permit and fee system was created under the Taylor Grazing Act of 1934. This law established grazing allotments, rules about grazing eligibility, and the permit and fee system. Today, ranchers who own or control private-based property to support their livestock can apply for a permit to graze on public lands. There are a couple different types of permits, but typically they're issued for up to 10 years. And within the permit, agencies will set rules for the number and type of livestock, the period of use, and the specific grazing allotments. Ranchers will then pay an annual fee per animal unit month. Animal unit month is a measure of the amount of forage or plants that are required to sustain an animal unit for a month. And an animal unit is defined as one cow and her calf, one horse, or 5 sheep or goats. This set fee is calculated each year by the Forest Service and the BLM based off a few different factors, including the cost of livestock production and the annual selling price of beef cattle. Now, public lands grazing is a very give-and-take relationship between ranchers and federal land management agencies, and it's one that often fosters a contentious divide between ranchers and other public lands users, including sportsmen and women. On one hand, the case is often made that ranchers should pay more than they currently do to graze on public lands. The public lands grazing fee is substantially lower than the grazing fees on private and state trust lands. This means that the amount of funding that federal agencies put towards rangeland management and improvement programs well exceeds the actual revenue that is earned from grazing on public lands. On top of that, rather than going back into the U.S. Treasury, 50% of revenue from grazing goes right back into rangeland management and improvement projects, such as water tank installation and seeding to improve vegetation, which ultimately improve the land for continued grazing. But on the other hand, ranchers who graze on public lands assume much greater responsibility than those who graze elsewhere. On their own, they routinely take up costly, labor-intensive maintenance projects that can be anything from invasive species removal to wildfire prevention to ensuring safe recreational spaces for folks like myself. Ranching is a key piece of Western heritage and history. There are families who have been grazing on these lands for centuries, well before our public land management system was established. And because of that, ranchers have a very unique connection to and knowledge of the land, meaning they can be exceptional stewards of these resources. At its core, livestock grazing represents the nuance of balancing multiple uses on our public lands. Ultimately, though, there's a lot all public lands users can agree on, whether we be ranchers or outdoor recreationists. For one, clean water and healthy land are important to all of us. From this common ground, we have to collaborate to ensure the continued protection of our shared resources for generations to come.